Welcome to Esports Odyssey, a podcast dedicated to making esports simpler by breaking it down and learning from the best. On this show, we talk to successful people from within the esports ecosystem to see what sets them apart from the rest of us. Today, I'm joined by MitchMan, up-and-coming commentator, analyst, host, what have you, 22 years old from Ireland. He's been casting for, I think, 3 years now. Events like the ESL Pro League, Intel Extreme Masters, lots of the minors, most recently a lot of Road to Rio, and even some Valorant. Hey, Mitch.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad to have you here today.
Hey, pleasure to rock on up.
So in this podcast, we always start at the beginning. We always want to go back into the past and kind of look at people's career and look at people's way into where they have, how they got to where they are now. So let's start at the very beginning, which is, what is it that first got you into games?
I think when I was like 5 years old, we had an Xbox with Halo on it, and I just started playing that, fell in love with it. I used to spend every day after I did my homework, we didn't have the internet or anything, no Xbox Live. I didn't even know what that was till I was like 14. I just played the single player again and again and again, or sitting down with my grandfather. We would just play the like 1 versus 1s, essentially. I always won. I don't feel like he was trying, but I just fell in love with Halo 1 and 2, and from there, never lost the obsession of video games.
That's awesome. So you were a console player back then?
Yeah, most of my life. I think I switched to PC 7 years ago, probably 7 at this point.
Okay. So with that, then what was sort of the first time that you played any kind of game in any kind of competitive setting? I'm not talking necessarily sort of a pro tournament, but your first time you were actually competing for something.
It would have been, I can't remember any of the like small online things. You always enter like a Face It Points Cup or something random like that. But I think the first one I ever played was G Series. It's an Irish tournament series that happens here. It's a LAN event, and it was just me and a couple buddies decided to rock up and didn't get grouped, which was really the positive takeaway from that. We don't need to talk about anything else. At how those playoffs went. I still have nightmares, but yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was a really nice introduction to kind of esports and what it was. I think one of the guys on the team, it wasn't a team really, we were a bunch of buddies playing, like I said, and they were like, oh, there's a tournament, we should go, like, hang out, play some games, meet some other guys. Like, yeah, sure, why not? And it got me hooked immediately.
And that was in Counter-Strike?
Yeah, it was in Counter-Strike.
Okay, so you didn't really ever try to compete in Halo in any form?
No, I think we had a clan at one point. We used to play against other teams, but never in like a tournament. It was just, we'd find teams on, I don't even know, forums. I wasn't the one finding people, and then we would play a couple of games 4v4, but that was it really. Nothing too serious.
Got it. Okay. So what else did you do in those days, I guess, when you were first getting into video games? What were your other hobbies?
At the time, not too much. I used to play a lot of sports, but due to some conditions, I had to give that stuff up. One of them was being lazy, as I'm sure my friends would tell you, but some other medical stuff. So I ended up going with as basically just school. School and video games was my thing. A cool guy.
School and video games. What a nerd. Okay, so you went from Halo into Counter-Strike. So you've always been an FPS person then?
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't remember, like, maybe Crazy Frog Racer, all that sort of stuff was probably the only other thing I played, but FPS was always my bread and butter.
What about any other Any other sort of games? Is there anything else from your childhood that you kind of have fond memories of?
Well, I mentioned Crazy Frog, right? I think racing, driving was always the thing I enjoyed. I was never particularly good at it, but I enjoyed it. And Rocket League ended up being one of my segues where I loved Rocket League. And when that game came out, we used to play it every single day. We competed in the RLCS qualifiers, the online ones. I think we made it to top 32 is the best we did.
Oh, wow.
For it was season 1, like, so skill back then wasn't nearly what it is now. Like what I can do as standard, even just picking the game up every now and then, is back then what we would consider god tier. We'd see people dribbling the ball in the air and be like, what the hell? What kind of witchcraft is this? But yeah, like, it was, I think that was probably the only other thing that ever pulled me in, was outside of FPS, was Rocket League, just because it's fast, 5-minute games, hop on, have a bit of fun, and get out of there as well. It was nice little bursts of energy.
Okay, cool. So tell us a little bit about how you first got into commentary.
So that's a weird story. I actually never I didn't even know what a caster was when I first commentated or was asked to. I was supposed to play at a LAN event. It was a little bit after that first one I talked about. We ended up going to, we were supposed to go to Belfast to play in a tournament called One Tap LAN. And then about a week and a half beforehand, my team fell apart. People just didn't want to play anymore. A couple of arguments, all that sort of stuff. So we couldn't go to the LAN, obviously, but I'd already planned to go. I was excited for it. I wanted to go see all my buddies as well who were competing on different teams. So we said we might as well I'll still go. And I texted the tournament. And at the time I was working with my dad, who runs an IT company, as an IT engineer. So it's like, well, do you need any help cabling or, setting up the event in general, being as I'll be around? And they were like, no, we're good for that, but we need a commentator. I think they said we need a caster, and I was like, Google caster, what is that? Like, I'd watched all the big tournaments, I'd watched the majors, all that a whole way through. I followed teams, big fan of LDLC back then, but I'd never kind of copped on to the whole, like, behind the scenes, like, there are people talking, that's a career, never really realized that. So I turned up and just gave a hand. I was working with Dinko, a good friend of mine who we've worked a lot with since then together. And yeah, it was wild. Just, it was a bit of fun. I was terrible at it. Somehow Dinko was nice enough to try to help me get better. Moved on to help me with a couple bits and bobs afterwards, like some small jobs. Dean as well, another guy from the Irish scene. Those two just kept me going and kept me pushing for events even when I wasn't great. Just small, like, amateur level stuff. And eventually got picked up by ESL through Dean, and here we are, flying.
So during that first gig, how did you feel, and what kind of made you want to do it again?
Yeah, funny that nothing. I didn't want to do it again at the start, anyways. Definitely after, like, during the event, I would be like, no, I'm never doing this again, because it was embarrassing. I was commentating people I knew, and I knew that the whatever 50 to 100 viewers we had were also people I knew that I competed with in the Irish scene. Pretty much everybody watching would have been Irish, so it was weird for me to stand up and say, like, especially because I was never like one of the top guys in the scene, to be saying basically what he's doing is good, what he's doing is bad. And I felt really self-conscious about, I didn't want to say the wrong thing, and I knew they'd make fun of me and all that sort of stuff. Not in like a mean way, just, they'd be like, Mitch, what are you talking about, man? And so I definitely felt a lot of pressure doing it. I didn't want to do it again, but I got honestly, if it wasn't for how nice the Irish scene is, I don't think I would have. Everybody was so supportive of it, and it wasn't something I was trying to do again. This was just me rocking up to help out. It was marketed to me as Dinko was going to cast it, and I was going to give him his lunch breaks. I was like, that's fine by me, sure. It means I can hang around. But everybody was so nice afterwards, saying like, oh, you did really good. You should try to do more. And that kind of gave me like a rush where I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try to get better. I'll try to do a little bit more of this. And Dinko obviously then supporting me, Dean as well, giving me tips, advice on what I could do better. So I just kind of, it wasn't more like, sorry, it wasn't so much I wanted to do it again as much as I kind of went with the flow of people telling me, do it a bit more, try do this better. I was like, okay, sure, I've got nothing better to do. I think I was in university at the time, or I was just about to start. So I had a lot of spare time, not a lot to do. So I said, this is a bit of fun. Why not You know, it was easier than making another team.
Yeah, I know the pains of trying to get people to play.
Yep.
And
I feel like that's a dig at me for certain games.
aligning everybody to have the same goals, right? Is one of the biggest issues there.
Yeah.
So from there on, walk us through a little bit of your career, sort of from this first tournament you cast to where you are now.
It's a wild one. So I started, like I said, in that Northern Irish amateur event, One Tap LAN. I moved from there to a couple online broadcasts, all like small amateur leagues. You'd be talking like €2,000 prize pools at most. Then just kept on doing anything I could get my hands on. I would commentate, did the same for probably like 4 or 5 months. And then eventually I got brought in on an ESL gig because Dean needed a second caster. So he brought me along and we ended up doing that. Things went well. ESL liked us. They hired us for more. And it was never really a serious thing. It was kind of like something cool. Like I remember a couple of guys in college, I was walking around and they would just be like, "Oh, Mitch, what's up? Oh, he's a commentator," or whatever. And I was like, oh, am I? Okay, cool. Woo! It felt cool to be like recognized by a couple people within the esports scene. But it was a hobby at the time, 100%. I think it kind of got real when ESL asked us to go away for, it was about 2 weeks, to do 2 different events, and one was the qualifiers for the minor. And that was crazy to me because it's part of the major circuit, you know. I had no right being involved in that kind of thing, but not as if I was going to say no. So we went along, we did it. It was amazing. It was a great experience at the time. And that was when I kind of went like, wait, I'm flying around. I'm getting put in hotels. I'm getting to do actual teams, you know, like that was the tournament when the VP lineup that had been together forever finally got dropped by Virtus Pro. Because they just weren't accomplishing anything. They failed to get through the minors. I think they lost both games, if I remember. They went out in the lower bracket anyways. And like being part of we cast their last game as a team, and that was like, that gave me shivers just knowing like I played a tiny role in such a historic event within a game I loved so much that I wanted to just keep doing it. And I think that's when university kind of took the back step.
So that was your first sort of breakthrough. What happened after that?
A lot. So a Maltese organizer started coming up called Quickfire at the time, now Eden Esports. They took a liking to a couple of us. We started working online broadcasts with them alongside all the ESL stuff. I started branching out as well, doing different games. I think last year I did 9. I did live events in 9 different games. So I'll do anything essentially. But I love esports more so than just CS:GO. Like the competition is what gets me going. You know, one player sat on a stage going, "I'm better than you, and I'm going to prove that." And I can get behind that no matter what. If it's a game of checkers, let's go. I'm in. Throw a bit of trash talk, why not? But yeah, it was just a lot of gigs constantly, and it started to kind of take over my life because I would end up working every day. And some of it would be I'd be asked 2 days before, some of it was on the day. Occasionally, rarely, I would have like a week's notice or something. And so it just ended up in this position where I wasn't going to university, I wasn't going out much, I was just sat there, I was commentating almost every single day. And it was awesome.
And out of all the gigs, I don't want to put you on the spot here. But out of all the gigs, what would you say has been the sort of most major, the most exciting thing that you've done so far?
It's a hard one, but I mean, there's a few that stand out because they were like milestones to me. So working at the Supernova series was the first time I got to work as an analyst. I worked with Maniac, which was insane because I'd followed him I used to be a fan of all the teams he was on. I used to watch them nonstop. Was big into the French scene, and then all of a sudden I was on an analyst desk with him, with Sponge as well, with Banks, who I'd seen on the broadcast obviously a lot. I'd never seen him compete competitively because, as we always say, he's an old man, and I wasn't. I didn't even have the internet back when he was playing. I'm not even sure the internet was around when he was. But the thing was, that was huge for me. That was like a real kind of pinch me. Am I actually awake? Crazy situation. Since then, I would say probably my favorite was WePlay. It was unbelievable over in Ukraine. They had everything was trained. Everything was themed like a train. There we go. We had suits made for us with like conductors' hats. So they were stylish. You could wear them on their own, but they went with the whole like tickets please kind of thing. That was really fun. Everything about that event, start to finish, was incredible.
Awesome. I guess looking at that event and everything that you've done so far, what would sort of be the holy grail for you?
Moving forward, or that I've done?
Yeah, moving forward.
Well, I'd like to, at some stage. So, obviously, this season the Road to Rio essentially took place as the minors, more or less. I'd like to work at one of the live minors. So far, I've done like ESL Pro League, but it's been remote. I've done the minor qualifiers. I've done the Road to Rio as well. But I'd love to work on an actual minor tournament. That would be like the cherry on top for me in CS.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So throughout all of your career, we've now heard sort of a breakdown of what you've done and where your career path has been so far, and obviously you're into multiple games, so things might not always stay with Counter-Strike or solely with Counter-Strike, but what to you was sort of a breaking point where there was something that you really struggled with, and suddenly it felt like you did something that took you to the next level? Was there ever something like that?
I don't think so. For me, it seems like it was more of a steady increase. There was never like a moment where things just shot off. At the very start they did, but that pace kind of just kept up the whole way. Obviously a couple slow months, and when it bounces back it feels incredible, but for the most part it was a pretty steady gain. I think that the moment that was defining for me, like one of the few things I can look back on and say like that was a turning point or a real change for me, was when I like fully decided to give up university. It was again gradual. Like I stopped going in, but I was still homeschooling myself. I was turning up for tests. I was doing all that. And then there was just a point where I was like, I'm not going back next year, because I was studying maths, and I love maths. That had always been my thing. Was like I said, school was my other hobby, and specifically physics and maths. But there comes that point where I just wasn't. I would sit there in a class, or I'd be studying, and I didn't have fun anymore. I didn't enjoy it. I was just like, I want to cast something. I want to watch CS. I want to do more esports, and I completely lost the drive to do what I wanted to do before. So I think that was like, I remember the day that I sort of went to my parents and was like, I might not go back next year. And I wasn't at the point where it would quite be justified as full time, but they'd seen the like upward curve. So you can always go back to school, right? Can't go back to esports and exactly where you were. So that was the turning point for me really in my career, where I was like, all right, let's take a year, let's go for it, and then figure out how to fix it if it doesn't go right.
And when was that?
That was about, oh God, I don't even know what day it is anymore. 2 years ago, I think, maybe
2 years ago.
Maybe a little, like a year and 8 months or something like that. Yeah. So
that 1 year off of university paid off then?
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. Very lucky.
And
I wouldn't advise it, but it worked out for me. I was lucky.
And since you mentioned your parents, what was their thoughts on this? Are they supportive?
Yeah, they were super supportive. Even my grandparents, my parents, my girlfriend, they were all like behind it. Because again, they'd seen that I was passionate about it. You know, I'd been playing video games for most of my life. I think at that point, before casting, I was playing 6 hours a day average. That's not weekdays or anything, that's just average. So it was a big part even when I was dedicating a lot of my time elsewhere.
We'd like to thank our partners at Elgato, without whom this podcast wouldn't be possible. They provided much of the equipment used for all of our recording sessions. Elgato is the leading provider of hardware and software for content creators, leveraging decades of experience to develop widely accessible products that empower all creators to produce high-quality, professional content. Elgato has provided us with a reliable 4K 60 Pro capture card, professional keylight lighting, and a customizable stream deck, enabling us to pull off pretty much anything we can think of. Head over to elgato.com to see their full product line.
So they knew I wanted to do it and that it seemed like it could be viable. So it was like, yeah, okay, take a year, see where it goes. If you make progress, keep doing it. If you don't, just go back to school. It's not that bad. People take gap years all the time, so better to do it.
True.
And not regret it later on.
And do you know if your family watch your broadcasts?
Yeah, sometimes they do. They like check up on my Twitter and stuff. I get a text sometimes if I'm saying something like, "Hey, what was that about? Who's annoyed you today?" Or you know, they'll message about different things on the broadcast as well afterwards. So I know my granddad's always saying to me, like, when I'm going away somewhere, when I'm going to a LAN event, he's like, "Oh, what Twitch is it on? Like, where do I get it?" I'm like, sometimes I don't know, so I have to like text my mom and she goes to their house and sets it up for them. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, they're really, really supportive of it. And they don't have any idea what's going on, just to be clear. They're watching it and they're like, "Oh, I hear Mitchell, but I have no idea what he's saying, but hey, you're doing good."
I mean, that's more than most people would hope for, I think.
Yeah. I'm happy anyways.
So let's get a bit into what actually got you to where you are, right? Like, why you? Why not someone else? Firstly, do you think it might have to do with your charming accent?
Well, I think I'm lucky with the accent I have in a way, because it's very accessible to a lot of different nationalities. I never grew up with like I was from Dublin. I don't have a Dublin accent specific. At least Irish people tell me I sound American. Americans tell me I sound Canadian. Canadians tell me I sound Irish. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. But I grew up with a lot of different accents around me, like very multicultural. So it just never really stuck. I think one of the differences was that I knew I could hear the accent of my parents versus other people. Like I could identify that was different to how they speak and different to how they speak. So it never caught on, I guess. But when I would say like a lot of it is luck. Right time, right place. You happen to be seen by the right person who decides to put you forward for a tournament, which in turn gets you in front of another person at the right time when they're looking for someone for and so on and so on. It's there's no formulaic approach to it. Like, if you have this and this and you do this, you're in. No, it's very very chance orientated in a way, I think.
Yeah, but you've created a lot of those chances yourself, right? I mean, you've stopped going to university.
Sure.
You've kind of focused a lot of the majority of your time, I guess, on that commentary, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I mean, especially in the beginning, I was watching it back nonstop. Like, what did I do wrong here? What are these guys doing that I'm not? How do I get better? No, like I mean, I put in the work. Definitely, the work ethic helps. The fact that like I've never cast anything I don't play. I play a lot of games, so I think I've got a pretty decent grasp on the majority of games that I cast. Now, no, not near like CS is my thing. That's 95% of what I do is Counter-Strike, and I understand Counter-Strike. When I look at maybe like Fortnite or something, I understand aspects of it. A lot to learn. Not gonna lie about that, but the fact that I play it a lot, the fact that I play all these games, it gives me an edge there. Plus, I feel like having a maths background helps, at least in research, that I can use more of the statistics and apply them more. but I'd probably find a way to say that maths helps with anything because I love it.
I guess it does. It's one of the key things of life, right?
Absolutely.
So what if you had to put your finger on one thing, what would you say has been the key driver to your success?
I guess probably work ethic would be the one. Like you gotta just put your head down and get better. I would tie it in with that, but I think you've got to also does all the work smart, right? All that sort of stuff. But also be super honest with yourself. Like if you come into esports in general with an ego, you're not going to go anywhere. You have to accept that when you start out, you are bad. People above you are better, and you're never going to be the best or the best that you can be. I guess the ability to always look at something. Like I don't think I've ever looked at a cast I did or anything I've done and said, that was good, and that was it. There's always, but I could do better at this. I think that's an attitude you definitely need to have, because everybody I know that's successful within esports has that. If you say, how did that cast go? They'll go, oh, it was good, but I messed this up and I'd like to do this better. And it's those, being honest with yourself is really important.
That's such a good point. And I think you kind of alluded to that with what you said about Rocket League earlier, where, as you were saying, you placed top 32 back then, and what was sort of the top play then is kind of average nowadays for the players, right? And and I think you'll see that with a lot of games too. I used to be a Dota professional, and I'm completely terrible. I wouldn't cut it with today's pro scene. And you just look back 5 years ago, even in Counter-Strike, right? You look 5 years ago into the teams and how they play, and they just look like they're terrible compared to where the teams are now, right?
This is the thing,
There's
right?
always this constant improvement.
Yeah, the evolution, right? You're going to get better and better. It's the whole thing, like, it's the same in everything. And this is where, like, even poker, which at a base level I know I play, my dad didn't get it as much. Like, I tried to explain to him. He's like, yeah, but it's all luck. It's like, no, it's not all luck. But if you look at how people played that from the beginning all the way through, it's still evolving. There's still a meta changing, and it's not like they, in Counter-Strike, they change the rules, they add extra stuff, the new guns, economy changes, map changes. So there's an easy way to say, yeah, well, it's changed, but the game's changed, right? Poker hasn't changed. It's been the same for hundreds of years. Still changing, still evolving. Once you present a set of rules to someone and say, play a game like this, there's going to be someone that looks at it and goes, how do I maximize my chances? And then when they do that, how do I maximize my chances versus that strategy? And then versus that strategy, and we're just going to go like that forever, where if you're doing something a certain way, there's going to be another way that beats you. And that's that's what I'm saying about, I love esports. I love competition, because it's great for me to look at a game and I think, okay, these are the limits of the game. These are how it's played. This is the best way to use it. Okay, cool. Then I come and commentate it could be a professional, it could be an up-and-coming guy that's, thinking about things differently, and they do this wild thing that you never thought of. You're like, oh, how did he think of that? How did he come up with it? And it's incredible to just see the innovation of individuals in that way.
Yep, for sure. But I think that the key takeaway, and this is such a good point, is just you can always get better. And even the Counter-Strike pros of today, even the very best, if you look at them in 3-4 years time, the way that they play now might actually be considered pretty bad compared to where they're going to be then. Yeah. And that's a game that's 20 years old.
Well, if you're doing something for 4 years and you're still doing it the same way in 4 years, it only tells you two things. Either you're bad, or the people you're playing against are bad if they keep letting you away with it. That's the only thing you can conclude.
Yeah, for sure. So throughout all of your career, was there, maybe there's one, maybe there's two, were there any key people that have kind of lent themselves to you as mentors and kind of key pieces of advice you've taken away from them?
Well, definitely Dinko and Dean. As I said, I wouldn't be here without them. My Irish boys helped me out. We've worked a lot of events together and we always have fun. So we're good friends, which is incredible. But outside of that, outside of the friendship that we share, you know, they've taught me a lot about looking at my own work objectively, being honest with myself. Like all the values and my work ethic that I have, how I approach different tournaments is down to them. For the most part, they built the foundations. The other one would be Banks. As much as I hate to give him credit, he's done just insane stuff for me, both as a person and as a professional. Just constantly telling me what I'm doing wrong in the nicest, well, in a friendly way, and by that obviously I mean in just a cutthroat. Here's the information, you deal with it. But that's perfect for me, because I don't like to fluff it up, right? To sugarcoat it. Just here's the problem, fix it. And yeah, but Banks has been huge for me in that way. Like I've improved so much since I started working with him, certainly on the analyst desk, which is where I began. We're now commentating together, and again, it's the same thing. Like sometimes maybe one of us it's usually me, maybe one of us is slacking off, maybe we're like kind of not focused fully, and you'll just get a text like, wake up. And you're like, all right, got you. And just holding each other accountable and making sure that we're fine-tuned. I think that's the best thing you can do for someone, honestly. Like if you've got a friend, it doesn't matter if it's esports or not, in any aspect of life, any walk of life, that's messing up, that's whether it's in a relationship, professionally, whatever it is, you just tell them. Just be straight up and say, why are you doing this? You know, do you want to succeed? Do you want to do this? Do you want to that? Then fix it. And well, hopefully they'll take it the right way.
Hopefully, yeah. So you know, besides that, given that you are now a little more experienced, you've done this for a while, what other pieces of advice would you give to aspiring commentators?
I guess don't give up unless you should. Like, think about the situation that you're in. Are you putting in 100% of the work that you can? If you're not getting to where you want to be, are you really trying? Are you putting in 100% every day? Are you trying? Are you giving up things in your personal life? You know, maybe your girlfriend wants to go on more dates or something, but are you doing that? Or are you committing the time towards getting better? Are you seeking advice from the right people? Are you being honest with yourself about your work? Just don't go with the flow. You know, we see with professional players as well. I think Launders brought up a great point, which is in the same ballpark, about professional players in Valorant being like, if you're signed on a 20k contract per month, don't just sit there and coast through it and go, I'm getting 20k per month. You're not providing value to the org at the moment with the tournaments that are on. You need to up your socials. You need to do better at streaming. You need to just push yourself as much as you can, because whatever position you're in, whether it's good or bad, it can be better. And if you just slack off and kind of go, well, I'm doing okay now, so I'll just keep up at the same level, you're probably going to stay at the same level.
That makes a lot of sense. And one question that we hear a lot from commentators or people that are kind of new to commentary especially, and I think that's very unclear to a lot of the audience, is sort of the difference between play-by-play and color commentary. Could you go a little bit into detail on sort of the biggest differences and what to focus on? Sure,
yeah. So there's just because you're a color commentator, first of all, doesn't mean you won't play-by-play, especially depending on the game. We're talking Counter-Strike specific, you won't as much. If it's something like Fortnite, you will. But basically, at the start of the round, you guys have a little bit of a conversation between you. You know, how's the economy looking? Where are they going? How have they been playing so far? It depends what stage of the game you're in. What are the flaws of the other team? Yada yada. It's just a casual conversation about whatever you feel is an important topic to discuss. You move into the round, they start to set up. Well, you're discussing their setup, what the other team is doing, what this team is doing to counter that. Are they getting information? Are they just setting up to straight push a site? How do they play this normally? Is there anything different to what you're normally seeing? That's color. You've got a white sheet in front of you of all the players, and you're coloring it in for the viewers at home. You're giving them that extra bit of detail. Then they start to throw their smokes, their flashes. You're starting to calm down. They go into the site. When the action's happening, that you should have at some point before that transitioned to your play-by-play. He's going to be the one doing the like inhuman reactions and all that sort of stuff as they go in and they flick headshot, 360, turn on their spin bots, all that sort of stuff. that's the play-by-play's job, essentially. So if you want to be the one that's like, oh my God, you're probably not a color. But problem is most people are play-by-play, because you give someone a choice of either sitting there, I'm over-exaggerating it, but sitting there and going, well, look at them, they're setting up for this. And that's your sort of analytical role. Don't be a little bit more excited than what I just did. And then the option to be hype and going crazy, and the one that when you go, oh, the crowd's going wild, everyone's going to choose the second one. So I guess out of necessity, sometimes you might need to go to a color role in a duo, but it's that's more or less the difference. And there's also hybrids as well. Like sometimes you've got two people that know the game really well, that are good at color commentary and can play by play and do it well. And if you've got a sort of mutual respect for each other, you know that each of you is good. You're not self-conscious about who's better, or, you know, I need to show up to get more gigs or whatever. If you're committed to being together and you feel like that's the kind of dynamic that would work, you can swap it up. You know, I could play by play one round, you play by play the next. Who cares? Just whatever feels right in the moment, and you don't think about it. Those are the best ones in my opinion, but it is also rare to come across someone that you can bounce off that willingly.
You know, that's an interesting take and an interesting angle. To me personally, it's always felt like color commentary would actually be the more fun part to do.
Okay.
But maybe that's because I'm more analytical.
Sure.
I like to think about why people do the things that they do.
Yeah.
So outside of that, you know, and while we're on the topic, is there anything, you know, any misconceptions that people have about commentary, or any things that usually stand out to you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess so, actually. No, I was going to say no, but I think people don't realize sometimes the dynamic that's at play. You know, there's certain tournaments where you're going to not have the same energy level as other ones, depending on the teams. You know, you're not going to hype a tier 3 tournament the same way that you hype a major, right? It's just, there's more on the line, it's more important, and it devalues the hype almost if every time someone does anything, you're like, oh my God, it's incredible, he shot one of them. That's going to fade away pretty quickly. And people are going to love it at the start when you come up. I was that guy. I think everyone does it in the beginning. Everything that happens, you're like, oh my God, he killed a guy with a pistol. Oh, it's insane. But then over time, if you're doing that every single play, you're like, well, what is the point? It means nothing, you know? When someone actually hits a 1v4 and you compare that to when a normal round plays out, exactly the same. And that's a problem. You need to have that extra, you know, bring it up a notch when the big things happen. But also how long the days are sometimes. I mean, depending on the tournament, some people like Blast Pro did it really well recently. They had the casters doing 1 best of 3 a day. And that's insane. Like, that's so good because you come in, you're full energy the whole time, you're focused up, you're ready to go. And then they do content, you know, they do their interviews and whatever afterwards. They're messing about for the rest of the day, filming content for in between the series. That's more expensive to do, obviously, as an organizer, because you need more people. If you've got 4 series in the day, you need 4 sets of casters. But sometimes, like, I've done LAN events where I think I might have done one where we did 4. No, I think the most was 3 best of 3s a day. But that can run, especially because you got to be there early. You got to, if it's a LAN event, right, you're getting makeup done, you're getting all this sort of stuff, rehearsals probably on the day, sound checks. You could be there for 12, 13, 14 hours, maybe even more. The games alone are probably going to be 11 hours long because there's breaks in between them, maybe 12. If there's tech issues, then you're going further and further and further. So there's like a lot of the time, if you're watching the last best of 3, and this is a real sad thing about it, if you're thinking about it like this, 2 semifinals and a best of 3 in one day, and it's the same casters, well, by the time they get to the finals, which should be the hypest, the craziest one, those dudes have probably already done 2 days back to back of like 15, 16 hours. Finals ain't going to be as hype as if they were just coming in to do the finals kind of thing. So I think a lot of the time, people are very cruel about, I see it across every game, about commentators being, you know, they're not hype enough, they're not this, they're not alert. But it depends on the event. It depends on how the TO is treating them, because sometimes their quality is going to greatly diminish because of how long they've worked.
Makes sense. So besides that, you know, very long hours, which obviously is very exhausting and probably bad for your voice too. And it's probably hard to maintain your voice over that. What would you say have been the biggest challenges, and are the biggest challenges as a commentator and I guess as a freelancer in the esports industry?
Well, there's always like the pressure to keep up with everybody, right? You got to network constantly when you're at events, after parties. You're feeling tired? No, you're not. You're going to the after party because that's where everyone is. Now, I mean, they're small complaints. They really are. I love the job. I wouldn't trade it in for the world, to get that out of the way, just to make it clear. But there are definitely a lot of challenges with how this industry works versus how a traditional one does. Once you are used to it, it's fine. But when you come in initially, it can be very, very difficult to navigate. And that's why I say someone like Banks was so instrumental for me actually making it through this industry as successfully as I have so far, because understanding the ins and outs is something that you could mess up your first time around, and maybe you don't get a second chance. But other than that, I think for the most part, it's a very solid industry. Payments come late a lot of the time. I actually heard recently about someone in North America. I can't remember exactly who it was, but they're a freelancer. Now, I don't think they're a commentator, but it's very much the same. They might be a journalist, if I remember correctly. And they actually lost their house because all of their payments came in so late that they couldn't afford to pay it. They couldn't pay it on time. And that's something I've waited. I think the most I waited was 1 year and 2 months to be paid for something I invoiced. And that was in the very beginning of my career. So it was a lot of money. Like at the time, it was huge to me, especially when I was trying to justify doing it full time. And I got paid 1 year and 2 months later, which is just insane. It can be normal that you wait 5 months, 6 months to get paid, maybe even further. And you just never know. You could make X amount of money, but you don't know when that's coming in the door. And if you've got bills to pay, you could be in trouble. And that's probably the one thing. If I could change one thing about the industry, it was that they just paid on time. 30 days after you invoice, I think is fair. That's how every other job works, right? End of the month, you get paid.
Yep.
I don't see why it can't be the same here.
Yeah, I think I remember maybe it was Richard Lewis doing a big video on this and the dynamics behind it, and why people get paid late and why some people get paid later than others, right? There's a whole dynamic to it also, to who's more high profile, right? Who's gonna have more impact if people get paid late and so on. So
yeah, who's gonna go tweeting and giving them a bad reputation as opposed to just paying people on time, and that's it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that hard, but at the same time, sometimes just to go into that a little bit, actually, sometimes it's due to sponsors being late with their own payments to the tournament organizers, and then the tournament organizers don't actually have the cash flow to pay everyone at once.
100%.
It's this compounding effect.
I appreciate that, and I understand that. And there's been multiple occasions where someone said to me, we haven't been paid yet. I won't be able to pay you for at least another 2 weeks or whatever. But then I know the situation. That's fine. With the particular organizer who waited 1 year and 2 months, it was a case of, oh yes, it will be paid next week for 1 year and 2 months. And that's really harmful, because if someone's waiting on money, if that's their rent money, and they go to their landlord and they're like, hey, I work in video games, I commentate them. Oh yeah, there's tournament. Oh, you never heard of esports? Oh, esports. So it's people on computers clicking buttons, and I get paid to talk about them. They're already going to be like, yeah, all right. And you're like, oh, don't worry, I'll have the money for you next week. And next week comes, I'll have it next week. I'll have it next week. All of a sudden, you're probably some drug-taking guy that's just squatting in his house, and he's not going to be so nice to you anymore. So it's like, I don't mind if I know, it's going to be at least another month. Then I know I can budget for that. But what's just ridiculous to me is when people tell me, oh, don't worry, bro, 100%, next week you get paid. So now in my head, obviously you learn over time not to work that way, but initially you're thinking, okay, cool, so I'll budget to have that amount of money next week. And then 2 months later it comes in. It's like, why would you lie? Well, just tell me. Tell me the situation.
No, absolutely. I think transparency is key. in most things. Well, in all things in life, really. So, but let's move on to something lighter.
Yeah.
Which is also something fun and something that I always find interesting. Okay. When you go into a tournament, and especially when you're about to commentate, right? It's you just got invited to a LAN. You're at the LAN. Today's the first day.
Right.
Is there a routine that you follow in this morning just before your first match?
Okay. Not normal. Like, I'll try to talk to the players if I can. I remembered a couple events, like I can't remember the country, but Bucharest, I think it was Romania. Pretty sure it was, where I would go down for breakfast. I would see the players. I'll just be like, hey guys, gonna talk to you for a bit. I'll have breakfast with them, have a chat. How are you feeling about the game? Have you guys done much prep? And it's stuff that I wouldn't bring up until, if I'm casting it, until the game is actually live, so that I can't, of course, say to their opponent, like, I wouldn't be on an analyst desk going, they actually told me they haven't prepared nuke. Like, their opponents are sat there on the stage going, okay, let's pick nuke, guys. So you gotta be careful with, the stuff they tell you in confidence. Only bring it up when their opponents can take benefit from it, and if it's something that they won't mind, like, in that sort of way. But I wouldn't say I have a particular ritual before the actual event, though. Definitely the day before, I'll go over everything, but before it even, I'll go through every team, every map they've played in the last 3 months, 6 months maybe, with that lineup, how they've performed, if they've played head to head with the same lineups at all. I would stretch that to 6 months, but I think generally after more than 3 months, it doesn't matter if they were great on Inferno a year ago. Okay, Inferno's not the same map. The teams play it differently. Who cares? But yeah, just research is like the most important thing. Night before, go over all your research again. Make sure you're clear, and then I would avoid looking at. And this is just something I've learned over time about myself. I know lots of people operate differently, but I would avoid looking at my notes on the day until like right before the game, or till I'm like actually talking about it, and I'll just glance at them, because I think once you start on the day, you'll overanalyze everything. You'll be like, oh wait, do I bring this up? Should I just leave it? You've done your research, you've made your bed, now lie in it. And I think it's like exams as well. When I was in school, I was the one that would turn up to the exams and just lie down on a bench outside and wait to be called in for it, and just chill out. Because I think if you start studying, you might learn 0.5% more that you'll remember, but you'll stress yourself out. And for me, that means I forget more things that I've already learned. So it's better to just go in level-headed and try not to think too much.
So what about you personally? When it doesn't kind of disregarding tournament preparation, disregarding speaking to the players, is there anything that you personally do to feel ready for a match, to feel ready for a broadcast? Like going for a run beforehand, taking a walk.
No, I don't think so.
Do you have any weird rituals?
Not really. Just so for some reason, every time I have a broadcast the next day, I'm getting like 5 hours of sleep. My ritual, the only thing I do consistently is get into bed, feel too hot, not be able to sleep, flip over the pillow, it's still too hot, what's going on? Maybe have a shower to try and like just chill out. But no, I suffer from that like pre-event stress. It really gets to me every time. It doesn't matter the level of the event. Once there's going to be a crowd there, once there's teams that I'm not 100% confident with, matter of fact, even if there are, I'll still get that kind of feeling. It's like a mixture of stress and excitement to actually get it going. I just want to be, when you've flown to the country, you've traveled, you're in the hotel, you just want to, let's go. Let's just get it started. It's 2 a.m. Let's just start the tournament. Come on. But no, I wouldn't say I have any ritual that that I would do.
All right. I think that actually concludes everything that I wanted to ask you, sort of about your career and how you got to where you are. But we always like to end on a couple of more personal questions and on a couple of fun questions. I guess for people that might be listening, that might want to hire you, What do you feel is a key value that you bring to a broadcast?
Hello. I wear nice shirts. First of all, I think that's number one. Everyone will vouch for my dress sense. I say that very satirically because I wear crazy shirts a lot, but I've learned. I think my main selling point is that, like, sort of personality, fun. I like to joke around with other people that are on the broadcast, with the teams as well, and just enjoy events. I think that's the most important thing, is that, like, if you're coming in treating it like work exclusively, you're not enjoying yourself, then the people at home will get a vibe of that as well, that you're not having fun.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it is an entertainment product after all.
Exactly, yeah. If you're having a miserable time and you're trying to entertain people, well, I mean, that's when the clown at the birthday party starts to cry, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is like that. So moving on to the fun questions. One of them is, if you got to choose between 5,000 concurrent viewers on your own channel, or 50,000 on a white label channel, such as, ESL's channel or Challenge Mode's Twitch channel, which one would you prefer?
Provided I'm doing the same thing, because my actual just personal streaming is trash. But when I would go 5,000 on your own channel. More important to build up a brand, 100%. I mean, I've been on streams that have 200k viewers, and you get far less value from that. What you walk away from with that is a slight opinion. As I said, I used to watch the majors and stuff. I didn't know what the casters were. I didn't know what a caster was. Maybe that's just because I'm particularly dumb. But when you look at it on your own channel, those... Oh yeah, so what I was saying about the 200k, you'll only walk away with the money that they pay you for it. And 1% of people kind of going, oh yeah, I sort of recognize him the next time you're on. On your own channel, people know who you are. They know what channel. They're not on ESL. They're more aware that they're actually watching you. It's going to drive them towards more of your socials. It's going to engage them more with you. You can probably be more relaxed there and actually have a chat. I love to talk with Twitch chat. Not so much when we're doing like Road to Rio, partially because we're not sort of supposed to, right? It's supposed to be more like just straight up match content, like sort of a soccer broadcast on TV, but also because toxic people. So many toxic people. But on your own channel, you can be chill. You can just have a chat. If someone starts saying something stupid about a team, you can call them an idiot. No problem. Go for it. You start doing that on official broadcasts, you're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, you are. Okay, so your personal channel, that makes sense. And the other question we like to ask everyone that comes on the show is, if you were given one tweet that is guaranteed to go viral, what would you post?
Don't pick Dust 2, please. The love of God, just don't pick Dust 2. Leave it as a decider. Stop it. I'm gonna lose my mind someday. And that's pretty much where I'd be going with that one.
All right, so it's kind of an activist, kind of a ideological thing, but also a little bit memey.
Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere in between there.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't even say memey. I hate teams that picked us. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't go that far. But yeah, it's. I could talk for an hour about why it's just not a good idea. We bring it up every broadcast, and I think it's one of the few maps that, if you pick it, it's I think the only map really that if you pick it, your chances of winning are not greatly increased, regardless of who you're up against. Because even if it's a team that you can completely out aim, that you're just so much better than individually, you probably still stand a better chance on a tactical map than you do on that, because you'll still out aim them, plus you can outgame them.
I think that makes sense. I hate that map too. So, at the end of this, I'd just like to give you the chance to sort of tell the fans what you want to hear, tell the audience what you feel they should hear, and also, let them know where they can find you on social media, find you on Twitch, all that stuff.
Well, at MitchMan on Twitter recently got the @ changed. Finally, someone had it since 2009 and had never used it. So, thanks to that guy for ignoring all my messages. But we got it eventually, finally. Thank you, Twitter. Other than that, I don't think I got anything to say. I think I've made my peace already.
Nice. That's good. That's good. Also, thank you so much for joining us. It was great having you, and I'm sure we'll hear more from each other very soon.
I'm sure we will.
Thank you for listening to Esports Odyssey. If you enjoyed this episode, you can follow Challenge Mode on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, where we announce all new episodes and share podcast-related news. You'll find all of our socials in the show notes. Feel free to email us at podcast@challengeabout.com if you have any questions from this or any other episodes, or if you would like to learn more about Challenge Mode and what we do.